One star never fit in on Dick Van Dyke, but everyone else seemed like family. Dry wit and excellent timing were Richard Deacon's trademark as uptight Mel Cooley. His secret nemesis was not Dick Van Dyke. Carl Reiner, the show's creator. Hearing why will transform your view of the show forever. Richard Deacon was the ideal supporting role for millions. He played Mel Cooley, the balding, stone-faced television executive on The Dick Van Dyke Show, with dry humor and uneasy tension, notably in sequences with Maury Amsterdam and Dick Van Dyke. The majority of fans were unaware that Deacon was playing a realistic role. In private, he was solemn, guarded, and on edge, especially when Carl Reiner entered. Show creator and lead writer Carl Reiner was powerful. He was noisy, driven, usually joking, and rewrote scripts at the last minute. He performed fast-paced, freewheeling comedy, unlike Deacon's careful acting. Deacon comes from theater and play. He emphasized rhythm, precision, and preparation. Reiner? Chaos suited him. That contrast set the groundwork for years of quiet conflict. Later, production sources said Deacon felt overlooked. Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore were lauded. Carl Reiner made cameos and interviews. Richard Deacon quietly disappeared professionally and socially. He was crucial to the ensemble, but rarely acknowledged. In a rare late 1970s interview, he said, "Working on the Dick Van Dyke Show was like attending an uninvited party." His acquaintances remembered that comment. Was he kidding? Maybe. The tone was dry and the message obvious. Never felt right. It went beyond screen time. It was respect. Deacon, a theater and film veteran, reportedly fought Reiner over screenplay rewrites. He despised getting fresh lines minutes before filming. Reiner believed it refreshed things. Deacon believed it was clumsy, and hostility grew. Richard Deacon never fulfilled his sitcom potential. Deacon seemed allergic to network success, while his co-stars thrived on it. After takes, he didn't hang out with producers or joke between scenes. He arrived on time, delivered as expected, and vanished before the applause even settled, like a tightrope walker. Deacon played Mel Cooley, the bald, tense television producer, smoothly. However, few knew how much Deacon hated chaos. Though brilliant, The Dick Van Dyke Show was predicated on spontaneity. Rewrites abounded. Daily scene changes were last minute. Carl Reiner, who developed the program and shaped its creative energy, thrived in chaos. This approach was like nails on a chalkboard to Deacon. Cast interviews and bios say Deacon appeared uncomfortable throughout filming. One crew member recounted Reiner giving them a new scenario 10 minutes before shooting. All but Deacon accepted it. After reading silently, he excused himself and left the set without explanation. No shouting, no disagreement, just silence. It was a loud statement. He would not follow Reiner's regulations, not an isolated moment. Deacon eventually drew lines. He refused improv even though Reiner encouraged the cast to try. He strictly followed the script and regularly requested clarifications when Reiner made unexpected jokes. The cast considered it creative play. It was Deacon's nightmare. His interviews may have revealed the most. Although he rarely talked publicly, Deacon was very careful with his words. He lauded Dick Van Dyke's timing. He praised Mary Tyler Moore's poise. He acknowledged his chemistry with Maury Amsterdam. He avoided Carl Reiner every time. One early 1980s interview asked Deacon about Reiner's influence. He replied, "Writing was strong. Stronger cast. A bland, detached response without elaboration or emotion." Some fans believed he was modest. Some heard a frigid door closing that never opened. The Dick Van Dyke Show was remembered in retrospectives and anniversary specials decades later. Panels and reunions without Deacon's name. Always lively and gregarious, Reiner never addressed the missing link. But some who worked closely with both men said the tension had never totally dissipated and would not be the last time the division became apparent. The Dick Van Dyke Show ended in 1966, but most of the actors had remained close for years. Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore reunited several times. The quick-witted Maury Amsterdam stayed close with most people. Carl Reiner collaborated with them on nostalgia, retrospectives, and comic specials. Richard Deacon vanished. From them, not the industry. He avoided rap parties. He did not participate in reunion images or in humorous interviews when the group exchanged inside jokes or recalled their favorite episodes. His absence was noted and shaped his legacy. Deacon's absence from post-show interaction confused many who loved Mel Cooley's clumsy charm. Why would a show's beloved character reject to be remembered? Why no interviews, analysis, Emmy tributes, or red carpet retrospectives? A late 1960s producer that briefly worked with Deacon recounted. He stated that Deacon will only participate in promotional content without naming identities. He reportedly named Carl Reiner when questioned. The producer did not elaborate, but the message was clear. The breakup was not pleasant. According to industry sources, Deacon disliked Reiner's creative decisions for the show. Even though Mel Cooley was popular, he thought his character was ignored in subsequent seasons. Deacon may have thought Reiner preferred dynamic, spontaneous actors who could match his fast-paced style. A professional stage performer who valued structure and discipline, Deacon may have felt out of place in a chaotic environment. Besides that, a silent frustration was rising. Friends said Deacon despised typecasting. He became dissatisfied after years of playing finicky bureaucrats, neurotic managers, and the same job in new outfits. For all its praise, the Dick Van Dyke program may have felt like the start of that trap. Television has a way of placing you in a box and shutting the lid, Deacon stated in a rare 1971 radio interview. The presenter questioned if he meant Mel Cooley, and Deacon smiled and said, "You said that, not me." Over the years, his distance from the cast grew. Reiner, always cheerful and gregarious, seemed uninterested in resolving the tension. Fans who looked closely saw a crack, not just artistic distinctions, a personal matter. Just when the stillness seemed permanent, a strange source rekindled the speculation for a minute. A small Illinois public television station aired a comedy retrospective in the early 1990s. It included rare interviews, bloopers, and forgotten behind-the-scenes anecdotes. The Dick Van Dyke Show episode featured anecdotes and tributes, but a tiny audio recording surprised long-standing fans. A mid-1970s recording of a regional theater fundraiser featured Richard Deacon briefly discussing the act that made him famous. Grainy quality. The audio was choppy, but his voice was clear. After a guest inquired if he missed working with Carl Reiner, Deacon laughed and responded, "Miss it. I'm grateful I survived." The comment was followed by quiet and a change of topic. That half-joking, half-serious remark has stuck with followers ever since. What did he mean by survived? Maybe dry humor? Something deeper? Reiner wrote or co-wrote most episodes, which may have restricted Deacon's creativity. Reiner enjoyed improvisation, collaboration, and last-minute changes, unlike Deacon's systematic, rigorous style. Reiner reportedly used Deacon as a punchline or fall guy, but rarely as a main character. Others have noted that Deacon was regularly derided for his appearance, fussiness, and charmlessness. Mel Cooley's portrayal included that, but insiders say Deacon was affected by typecasting. His friends stated he struggled with self-image and wanted jobs that showed his variety and depth, which Reiner never gave him. It was even rumored that Deacon had requested more substantial screen time in Season 4, but it was denied without explanation. He was not dismissed, but the message was plain: know your place. Deacon ceased attending production meetings until required after that. The vintage clip was debated in niche online communities by old TV aficionados and media scholars years later. While it never made headlines, it confirmed what many suspected. Deacon's absence from the show's legacy was not due to time, distance, or forgetfulness. It was personal. A last chapter occurred following Deacon's death, leaving everything even more unsolved. Fans paid tribute to Richard Deacon, 63, who died of heart issues in 1984. Newspaper obituaries commended his humor and professionalism. Co-stars from past productions sympathized, calling him kind, exacting, and quietly talented. However, one name was missing. Carl Reiner never spoke out. No Variety quotation, letter to the editor, or reference in Reiner's autobiography. Even though The Dick Van Dyke Show made both their careers famous, fans who followed their collaboration were confused. Some thought Reiner preferred to grieve alone. Others were unsure. Reiner was asked if he still remained in touch with his castmates in a 1995 Television Academy Foundation interview. He praised Dick Van Dyke. He came alive when discussing Mary Tyler Moore. Reiner stopped when Richard Deacon was mentioned. He was complex. Reiner remarked, a precise actor. He had preferences. Then he continued. The end. No stories, no affection, just a professional nod. Fans saw it as a formality rather than a memorial. That difficult word stuck. It meant what? Did it indicate set tension, creative differences, or something personal? Some suggest Deacon Reiner may have criticized or discarded a longtime bachelor who kept his personal life private. Both men were from separate worlds. One, an outgoing comic writer who loved teamwork. A quiet character actor who appreciated structure and space. Conflict between those two methods left more than damaged egos, left unhealed wounds. Even during following show anniversaries and retrospectives, Deacon was missed. Reiner and the remaining cast rarely acknowledged him, as if he had disappeared from the program. Television specials lacked images, films, and behind-the-scenes memories. It was like Mel Cooley had outlived his actor. But Deacon's impact lived on among fans, especially those who admired his delicacy and subtlety in each scene. It grew more poignant, because behind the smirks, rolling eyes, and nasty remarks on video was an actor who may have held a quiet bitterness long after the ovation ended. What happened next is all the more unsettling. Years after Richard Deacon's death, a hushed rumor spread. It circulated privately, but never in headlines or among colleagues, among industry veterans and fan forums. The rumor? The conflict between Deacon and Carl Reiner was personal and creative. Deacon may have disliked Reiner for sidelining him. Despite being a key cast member, Deacon had little screen time. The show was written by Carl Reiner. Controlled scripts. Over time, people saw Mel Cooley's moments becoming shorter and less important. What started as a prominent supporting role vanished. Deacon was unhappy with how things were handled behind the scenes, according to a 1987 retrospective studio staffer who declined to comment. That imprecise phrase generated decades of inquiry. Some claimed Reiner and Deacon fought over show direction. Others believed Deacon was secretly punished for pushing for more screen time. Some thought the real story was something neither man wanted to share. Reiner, noted for his warmth and wit, had a quick tongue when crossed, which didn't help. He might be devoted and vengeful. And Deacon? He was tough. His colleagues said he realized his worth and wouldn't play Hollywood if it meant surrendering his principles. One former CBS producer said Deacon left a closed-door meeting after disagreeing with a producer about a humiliating comedy scene. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. Just rose up, fixed his tie, and departed. He was that kind of dude. Proud, professional, and resistant to ridicule. Fans didn't disregard speculations of a deeper breach with Reiner. They nod. The most intriguing part? Even decades later, Reiner and others close to the show never addressed it. Silence, nothing denied or explained. Silence sounds like confirmation after that long. As more fans watch the Dick Van Dyke program, they are re-examining Mel Cooley's sequences to see what was real, what was performance, and what anguish may have been suppressed. One last hint, hidden in a lost interview that could clarify everything. A local Palm Springs radio station carried a rare, lengthy interview with Richard Deacon a year before his death in 1984. It was rarely broadcast, and the recording languished for decades. However, in 2016, a long-standing fan posted a transcription of forgotten broadcast content from television's golden period online. In that interview, Deacon spoke about his love of stage performing, Leave It to Beaver, and early live television. He discussed stardom, aging out of roles, and the bittersweet pleasure of being remembered for one thing despite doing so much more. Near the end, the host questioned, "Was there a co-star you just couldn't get along with?" Deacon halted. The hush lasted 5 seconds. You could hear the host shifting in his chair, unsure if the question would be addressed. Finally, Deacon said, "When someone writes your lines, edits your scenes, and defines your character, you soon understand if they're your ally or boss." Carl was always boss. Not angry, though not bitter, it was revealing. He quietly admitted that the power dynamic behind the camera had never fit him. It was the closest he came to confirming what many followers suspected, that the comedy, laughs, and flawless sitcom polish hid an unresolved issue. For all his talent and expertise, Richard Deacon carried this to the end. He never mentioned Carl Reiner again, never wrote about him in memoirs, and never attended Dick Van Dyke reunions. After Reiner died in 2020, co-stars, collaborators, and celebrities paid tribute. But Richard Deacon was never mentioned. Maybe there was a creative conflict. It could have been pride. Maybe it was an unhealed wound. But now we know it was real. It was never forgiven.